How do you defend against a guy like that?
You look up and you say, please help me.
More of a complete player. He can do more things than Haaland.
Kylian Mbappé might be one of the most terrifying players in world football. Give him space, and he is gone. Give him one defender, and he can make that defender look helpless. Give him half a chance inside the box, and the ball can be in the net before the goalkeeper even reacts. But there is another side to Mbappé that has become impossible to ignore, because when a player becomes this talented, the conversation eventually changes. People stop asking only how many goals he scores. They start asking how much influence one player should have, how much power a superstar should have inside a dressing room, and at what point confidence becomes ego. That is where the Mbappé debate gets interesting. Some of football's biggest names have watched him up close. Players who trained with him, coaches who worked with him, and legends who understand exactly what it takes to reach the top. Some have praised his mentality, his intelligence, and his hunger to succeed. Others have pointed to moments that raise questions about how that mentality affects the people around him. So what do football legends really think about Kylian Mbappé's ego? To understand that, we have to go back to where everything started. When Mbappé first began breaking into Monaco's senior team, he was still only a teenager. He made his first team debut at 16 years and 347 days, becoming Monaco's youngest ever first team player at the time. But what made people notice him wasn't simply his age. It was the way he behaved around experienced players. The young Mbappé was not afraid to take defenders on. Instead of constantly choosing the safe option, he would receive the ball and attack. He was willing to try things against players who were older, stronger, and much more experienced. For a teenager entering senior football, that kind of confidence was unusual. And the more people watched him, the clearer it became that his ability was not based only on speed. Mbappé could look completely relaxed while making difficult decisions at high speed. He could slow himself down, wait for a defender to react, and then suddenly accelerate away. That intelligence became one of the qualities Thierry Henry repeatedly praised. Henry has described Mbappé's football intelligence as one of the things that makes him special, while also highlighting his mentality, passion, and drive. That is important, because Mbappé has often been reduced to one simple description. But there is much more to his game than that. He can change direction, manipulate the defender's movement, and choose the exact moment to accelerate. That is what makes him so difficult to stop. It also explains why comparisons with great attackers appeared so early in his career. Mbappé had that rare combination of speed, technique, confidence, and unpredictability that makes defenders uncomfortable. And then there was his mentality. Mbappé wanted responsibility. He wanted the ball. He wanted opportunities. And he wanted to be involved when the biggest moments arrived. That hunger can be one of the greatest qualities a footballer can have. But it can also create a problem. Because when a player expects himself to influence everything, frustration can appear when the game does not go according to plan. And that is where the next part of Mbappé's personality becomes interesting. Once you watch Mbappé closely, you start to understand why people describe his mentality as so aggressive. He is constantly looking for the next opportunity. If a defender gives him space, he attacks it. If the defender moves forward, he looks for the space behind. And if there is even a small mistake, Mbappé wants to punish it. His acceleration is obviously a huge part of this, but the most dangerous part is often what happens before the acceleration. Mbappé can slow down and almost wait for the defender to make a decision. He can make the defender believe that the situation is under control, then suddenly change the pace. Once he creates that separation, the defender may have no time left to recover. That is what makes him so difficult in one-on-one situations. He is not simply running past defenders. He is trying to control their reaction first. And that mentality explains why people who have worked around him have often talked about his hunger to compete. Thierry Henry, for example, has praised his passion, mentality, and drive, while also emphasizing how intelligent he is on the pitch. That is the positive side of the Mbappe mentality. He wants everything. He wants responsibility. He wants to decide games. And coaches generally want their best players to think that way. But there is a thin line between demanding responsibility and becoming frustrated when things do not happen your way. And eventually, PSG gave everyone a chance to see that other side. During PSG's League One match against Montpellier in August 2022, one moment quickly became a talking point. Mbappe made a run during an attack, but Vitinha played the ball in a different direction. Mbappe stopped and visibly showed his frustration while the play continued. On its own, it was only a brief reaction, but when you are one of the biggest stars in football, even small reactions receive enormous attention. Your teammates see them, your coach sees them, and cameras capture them. The moment did not prove that Mbappe had an ego problem. We cannot know exactly what was going through his mind, but it did raise a question. Was this simply the reaction of an extremely competitive player who wanted to be involved, or was something deeper happening? And that was not the only incident from that match. Earlier in the game, Mbappe had taken a penalty and missed. Later, PSG were awarded another penalty. Mbappe had been the designated penalty taker for the match, but Neymar took the second penalty and scored. PSG coach Christophe Galtier later confirmed that Mbappe was the designated taker for that game. That detail matters, because it means the situation was not simply a case of Mbappe ignoring an established penalty taker. The bigger issue was the disagreement and confusion surrounding responsibility inside a team filled with superstar personalities. Suddenly, fans were asking much bigger questions. Who had authority? Who should take responsibility? And how do you manage three enormous personalities inside one dressing room? If you enjoy football debates where the details actually matter, stay with us, because this is where the PSG situation becomes much more complicated. The penalty incident became bigger because of everything surrounding PSG at the time. The club had Neymar, Mbappe, and Lionel Messi in the same attack. Three world-class players, three enormous personalities, and three players who were used to being major figures at their previous clubs. Managing that kind of squad was never going to be simple. Neymar later gave his own version of the tension between himself and Mbappe. He suggested that Mbappe's behavior changed after Messi arrived and connected some of their disagreements to jealousy. But that was Neymar's personal account of the relationship, not something we can present as an established fact about what happened behind closed doors. What is clear is that the relationship between PSG's biggest stars became a major talking point, and incidents like the penalty controversy made the situation even more visible. This is where the bigger question about Mbappe's influence comes in. A club can build around its best player. In fact, that is normal. When you have someone capable of scoring goals, creating chances, and deciding matches, you want to use those qualities. But building around a superstar is not the same as allowing that superstar to become bigger than the team. The club still needs authority. The coach still needs control. And the players still need to understand that sometimes the ball will go somewhere else. Someone else will take the penalty, and someone else will decide the moment. That is the difficult part of being a superstar. You can demand responsibility, but you also have to accept responsibility when things go wrong. And this is why calling Mbappe simply arrogant would be far too easy. His confidence is part of what made him special. His ambition is part of what pushed him forward. His desire to take responsibility is part of why coaches trust him in big moments. The question is whether he can keep those qualities under control when the pressure becomes enormous. And interestingly, not every major football figure who has worked with Mbappe has described him negatively. Luis Enrique, who coached Mbappe during his final season at PSG, later praised him extensively. After Mbappe announced his departure, Enrique called him a PSG legend and described him as a leader, while also praising him as a person. That creates a very different picture from the simple "Mbappe has an ego problem" narrative. Because if a coach who had a complicated final season with him could still describe him as a leader and a PSG legend, then the reality clearly has more than one side. Mbappe can be fiercely ambitious and still be a good teammate. He can be frustrated and still care deeply about winning. He can have enormous confidence without every emotional reaction being proof of arrogance. So perhaps the real question is not whether Mbappe has an ego. Of course he has confidence. At this level, every great player needs it. The real question is whether he can control that confidence and turn it into leadership. Because the mentality that helped create one of football's most dangerous players could eventually become either his greatest strength or his biggest weakness. And that is what makes the Mbappe debate so fascinating. But maybe that is the real answer to the Mbappe ego debate. His confidence is not what makes him a problem. In many ways, that confidence is exactly what helped turn him into one of the most dangerous players in the world. The real test is whether he can control that personality, lead his teammates, and put the team first when the pressure is at its highest. So what do you think? Is Mbappe's confidence the secret behind his greatness? Or do you think his ego could eventually become a problem? Let me know your opinion in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to the channel, because we are going deeper into the biggest debates, personalities, and hidden stories in football. You definitely don't want to miss the next one.